Is this a good incentive, and should state premiers and territory leaders as well adopt this mantra? If someone is fully vaccinated, they're not subject to lockdowns.
On that, Tom, I think we need to take the advice of the experts. Unfortunately, there have been cases throughout the world where people have been vaccinated, yet they've tested positive. So if the medical advice is, yes, once you're vaccinated, you don't have to go into quarantine, we can have freer travel arrangements for people in that situation, then of course Labor would support something like that. But the key is the expert medical advice and getting to that critical vaccination level. Can I give you an example, Tom?
Nothing's 100%.
My electorate...
Nothing's 100%. Yeah, I mean, you said there is evidence people get sick, get COVID once they're vaccinated. We know that's rare, and we know that even if they do have COVID at that point, they're often not symptomatic and they don't pass it on. It's not a 100% game, it's a numbers game, isn't it? A probability game.
Well, it is, and that's why we need to make sure that we're taking the advice of the experts. There's still a lot of testing going on in respect of the vaccines and their success rates. There's a lot of testing going on. A lot of epidemiological research going on about the transmissibility of the disease as well. I think we need to assess that once we get to those critical levels and take the advice of medical experts. I got a letter from a group of GPs in my electorate 2 weeks ago, Tom. There's 10 GPs in this doctor's surgery. They get 90 vaccines a week. That's 9 each. And they're saying we want more, but we can't get them off the federal government. These are the issues that we have to deal with if we're going to get to that stage where we're talking about people being free to roam Australia and avoid hotel quarantine, and we're nowhere near that yet.
Andrew, I want to go to the comments of Jane Hardlicker, the Virgin boss. She said, let's open borders, international borders. We can do this by the end of the year. There will be deaths. Is she getting a hard rap? I mean, let's look at it through this prism. 936 flu deaths the year before the pandemic and only 36 during the pandemic. Hundreds of lives, and I'm not being flippant about this, but nobody is now, as far as I know it, say, let's socially distance forever to save lives from flu. So isn't Jane just actually talking the cold, hard truth?
We don't want to bring into Australia the strains that are offshore. I do think we should be looking to pursue travel bubbles with jurisdictions which are comparable, have comparable levels of vaccination rates and have comparable institutions perhaps. We've already started with New Zealand. I would have thought countries like Singapore, perhaps Japan, could be on that list in due course. And I think that is something that is desirable and essential, that there is a timetable to do that. And that is basically what the budget says last week, that would be desirable by next year. But I think that's really referring to an across-the-board border opening. I think we can have travel bubbles with comparable jurisdictions much sooner.
Sooner. OK, so we're lagging a bit on this.
Well, I don't see why we couldn't. If the New Zealand experience is seen to be successful, and I think so far it has been, that we could pursue that again with other jurisdictions like Singapore.
All right. Get more forward-leaning on that. Matt, just a final question for you actually on news poll. Apparently Australians aren't concerned about debt in this budget. Do you agree? Well,
we know that during this period coming out of recession, Tom, dealing with the pandemic, that we do need to borrow. And we do need to spend to make sure that we're boosting the economy and that we're supporting jobs. But it's what you spend it on. And if you're a small business and you borrow, you want to grow your small business on the back of that. And the problem we have with this government's budget is the spending that they're undertaking and the debt, the $1 trillion worth of debt, doesn't produce a dividend for the Australian people at the end of it. Growth is projected to remain the same at the end of forward estimates. Wages, the same. No real dealing with the structural problems in the economy and boosting infrastructure. It's what you spend the money on, and they've got the wrong priorities.
For you on debt, or my pay gets docked. Go, you got 15.
Well, we've got a debt to GDP ratio which is heading to 45%. That is high by historical standards, and there needs to be a plan to pay it down once the pandemic is over.
Succinct. Andrew, Matt, thank you. Talk again soon.